last 100 years, Dixie State has made its way to becoming one of the highest-ranking public schools in the United States.
But a good school has its pasts, and Dixie State is no exception. Now, today, we're going to be going deep into the controversial history behind Dixie State University and a little bit from Dixie Junior College.
But to truly understand the complex history behind Dixie State University, we must first dive into the history of St. George itself. Hundreds of years before the LDS pioneers settled, Anasazi and Paiute Indians lived in the area, growing crops along the Virgin Riverbed, including corn, watermelons, and wheat. In 1776, the Dominguez Escalante missionaries became the first Europeans to visit the area. Fur trappers and other government parties soon followed in their tracks. In 1854, early Mormon pioneers settled the area in modern-day Santa Clara under the leadership of Apostle Erastus Snow, just northwest of St. George today. Between 1857 and 1858, the settlers used the St. George Valley for experimental farmlands. In 1861, the American Civil War broke out, leading then LDS President Brigham Young to establish a cotton mission in the valley. Many of the families assigned to this mission lived in the South and were quite accustomed to growing cotton and began to grow a small community. Paying respect to their Southern heritage, they began to nickname the area Utah's Dixie. The early years of St. George's settlement proved hard for the early saints due to the scorching heat, occasional flooding, and lack of drinkable water, but life ultimately got better slowly over the years. Soon after the saints' settlement began to grow, a cotton factory was built, but overall the young town's cotton experiment never really took off. In 1863, St. George became the county seat of Washington County, and work soon began on the St. George Tabernacle. Shortly before its completion in 1875, work began on the temple in 1871. After the first few decades of the LDS settlement, education in the areas grew, eventually leading up to a string of church-ran academies, which included one in St. George.
In 1911, to celebrate the city's 50th anniversary, the LDS Church built the Dixie State Academy, which would eventually become the precursor to today's Dixie State University. Now, the church continued to fund the academy until 1931, allowing the academy to split up into a high school and a junior college. Now, the junior college continued to use this campus until the mid-1950s, when it moved over to the campus that it uses today. Where we are right now is the third floor of the former Dixie State Academy. Everything else downstairs has been refurbished and reused as a children's museum. So this is all that remains of what used to be Dixie State Academy.
There's a lot of rich history behind Dixie State, and we'll be going through all of it. But first, we're going to be hearing from some of the people who went to this school during its history and still go there to get a better grasp on what it's like to be at Dixie State. Alright, so what is your name?
My name is Kayla Hepler.
Jack Hepler.
Grace.
Okay. What about you?
Eliza.
Heather Farnsworth.
My full name is Corey Rue Hepler.
My name is Daniel Morris.
Mark Quilter Johnson.
What did you teach at Dixie State?
I taught mostly classes in the biological sciences and in nursing, microbiology, anatomy, physiology, and general biology and stuff. I also taught a little bit of geology, and that was about it.
What did you go to Dixie for?
When I started at Dixie, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do, so I started off as business administration, and then I transitioned to accounting, and I didn't like that, and then I did finance.
We're getting our associates and our generals.
Okay, so it's just kind of like prerequisites, basically?
Yeah.
Alright.
I started in Dixie State right out of high school to get my associate's degree just in general education. Then started focusing towards early childhood education. Stopped my educational career for a little bit to start my family, then went back and finished my associate's degree. And since that time I went back and got a second associate's degree in nursing, as well as my bachelor's degree in nursing at Dixie State.
I was originally going there to get my degree in psychology, and then I wanted to transfer up to SUU to get a master's in neuropsychology.
General ed classes, and then I took psychology classes.
When I was going through Dixie, I had a couple of things I was going through for criminal justice. But I had quite a few career changes, and so I started with criminal justice and went to psychology and finished up there in the EMS program to become an EMT.
Were you able to teach at the junior college, or?
Yes, I did. That's kind of when I started. It was still a junior college.
What was it at the old campus in like a town square, or was it at the campus?
No, it was at the campus down there. It was no. I was teaching in junior high school when they were over at the old campus in the middle of town. I started teaching for the school system, and then I went to the college. So.
What were your experiences like at Dixie State?
I liked Dixie State. I thought it was a very friendly school. I'd been to several other universities, including graduate school, and I thought that Dixie was, especially when it was smaller, when it was a JC. I thought the teachers, the instructors, all the people, I thought they were very friendly, and the students were very, very friendly, and the classes were small.
I would say overall really good. I enjoyed the campus a lot, and just the program and the teachers were all really good. Yeah, it was a good overall experience.
Nice. Who was your favorite teacher at Dixie State?
I'm not saying this to suck up, but Jack Hepler was my favorite teacher. I took biology from him as one of my undergrad. Yeah, and it was my favorite class.
Good.
Minimal, I'd say, because
Yeah.
we don't spend too much time there.
Go to class and then go
Yeah.
straight home.
At Dixie State was actually a lot of fun. I knew the campus because I'd grown up there because of my dad being a teacher. So knowing where all the buildings were and where all my classes were really easy. And the campus was always maintained and looking beautiful every day. So I had a blast there.
They were pretty good. Because I was also in the National Guard, I kind of went there on and off through the course of probably about 10 years. And so when I started there, it was the Dixie State was called the Dixie Rebels. It wasn't a university at the time, but some of the experiences were just the changing the mascot. I believe at one point I counted 3 mascot changes, but
Well, I attended Dixie College from 1980 to 1987, and it was before the Americans with Disabilities Act. So many of the buildings were not too accessible to my scooter, and the professors were not, some of them were not used to students with disabilities.
This is like more like recent, but there's like a big craze about like electric scooters that students have been like taken around the school. They've practically like taken over the entire city at this point.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. What are your opinions on this?
Well, I think this is a good and bad thing. I understand the reason for decreasing the amount of cars. You know, the parking on campus is really terrible. There's just not very many places to park.
Yeah.
And which is typical, by the way. And the scooters will alleviate that. I am afraid that there's going to reach a point when the scooters and the regular traffic start to interfere with each other, and I think probably is going to be some accidents, because I've seen people driving around on these scooters and they act like that they don't know that anyone else is there.
Yeah, like
that's kind of dangerous.
It's like they own the road.
They do, yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of dangerous. It hasn't happened yet, maybe it won't, but I think it's a good possibility.
Well, that's a tricky question. So I live up in Salt Lake right now, and I work in healthcare, so I know it's causing a lot of problems as far as people's safety goes. I think it's a great opportunity for people who don't have cars to get around, so I'm kind of on the fence about it personally.
How much do you guys know about the history of Dixie State?
We've heard stuff about the history, but
Well, I know that it was founded in 1911, and I know that originally it was a church-sponsored school.
Yeah.
And I know that at one point in time it almost closed. They ran out of funds, and the people here in town kind of banded together and kept it going for a while until the state picked it up as a state-sponsored school, and then they had sufficient amount of funds, but it almost closed.
Actually, not a ton. Not being from outside of St. George, I don't think I knew hardly anything about it, other than Dixie means the South, and we're Southern Utah.
5 years after the church built the academy, the school changed its name to Dixie Normal College, and then changed it to Junior College in 1923. When the church stopped funding the college in 1933, the local residents in the area began financing it themselves while trying to get the state to take over management. 2 years later, it all paid off when Dixie Junior College was admitted into the Utah public school system. In 1952, the school adopted the Rebels, and 4 years later, making a Confederate soldier the official mascot. In 1963, the school completed its transition into its modern-day campus and opened its first dormitories. In 1993, the school officially dropped its use of the Confederate flag, eventually leading up to the abandonment of the Confederate mascot in 2005 and the nickname the Rebels itself in 2007. In 2009, Dixie State introduced the Red Storm as its new mascot. Over the next few years, the mascot would have many transformations. Between 2011 and 2016, the school went through one more name change, leading up to the current mascot, the Trailblazers. After knowing the history of Dixie State and its changes, it can be easy to come up with the conclusion that it was done with the best in mind, that the Rebels name and its legacy was too controversial for the college. But was it really?
Well, I thought the whole name change thing was very silly.
Yeah.
I did. It really bothered me. you've always got to have people that want to come along and change everything, and there was nothing wrong with what it was. It wasn't what people were making out of it. But the White Buffalo thing, the Trailblazers, I guess that was as good as any. But it takes some getting used to. Now, if you come to this area to go to school and you hadn't known the history of it, it's a White Buffalo, and you would have never known any difference. I understand that some people have an association with the war between the states and slavery and everything else, but I don't think there was anything, when they came up with the name Rebels, I don't think there was anything intended about slavery or anything else.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's people getting way too political, but I saw it coming, and it happened.
It kind of did happen.
Yep,
eventually.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
That one, so when I was there was no mascot because they had just gotten rid of the Rebels. And I was like, why? What's wrong with that? You got the UNLV has the running Rebels too, I think. And so I don't really understand. I mean, I know why they got rid of it, but I thought it was kind of misplaced maybe because the Rebels.
Like, you think it was like kind of like over-exaggerated?
Yeah, like I didn't really understand why they said what they said. So.
Yeah.
I prefer they'd stayed with the Rebels, to be perfectly honest, and that just comes from being an old St. George girl. Sometimes I think that we lose heritage in what is said to be politically correct. So I was sad to see the Rebel go. Again, growing up in St. George, known as Dixie, being raised, learning of the history of cotton, being grown here. Slavery wasn't a part of our heritage, none of those, what is thought to be the dark elements. And the rebel pride came through, and I thought we should have kept that.
It's just like a part of like the general history of this area.
I'm going to be harsh and truthful. I'm not a fan. I'm going to be a rowdy rebel until the day I die, and I know that sounds horrible. It's how I grew up. I grew up with the rebel flag. I grew up with the rebel statue of the soldiers on the side of the building. So to say that like the current mascot or what they got going on right now, I have to be as nice as possible and say no, because it just doesn't click with how I grew up. Yeah.
For me personally, it didn't matter. When I went to Dixie, my first experience there with being a rebel, that was a lot of fun. I was right out of high school. Had a lot of really cool traditions with being called a rebel. But as I started growing up and having my own family, that I started going to school more for just the education, not so much the label of what Dixie State was.
If you had the ability to change anything in the education system, what would you like changed the most?
Education in general?
Yeah, like
any college programs?
Yeah.
It's too expensive. I think it's too intimidating for high schoolers who, I mean, financially it's restricting for a lot of people. And I think if I got a scholarship at Dixie, and if I hadn't gotten that, I don't know that college would have been possible for me.
Well, I think smaller classes are always better. I think classes of 100 and 200 are, and I've had them, but they are, it's just difficult to deal with. I think smaller classroom sizes are always better. I think that sometimes as a school grows and gets bigger, it loses the personal touch. And I think Dixie I'm afraid has done that a little bit in the time I started. It doesn't seem as friendly and personal as it did when I was there.
I think one of the biggest lessons that you learn in college is not so much learning a subject going into nursing, or for myself, healthcare administration. But you also learn how to manage your life, to make time to do things, to go to college. I think sometimes the debts are necessary to kind of teach the unseen rules of just being able to function in society.
While I am for student loans, I am also for the Forgiveness Act, where if a student feels like they have just gotten way in over their head on their debts for their student loans, that there should be a certain percentage, not all of it, but there should be a certain percentage that is forgiven so that they can catch up and get their loans taken care of, so that they don't have to work their entire life just to pay off their loan.
I don't think that college is for everybody.
Yeah.
I just don't. I think there are other avenues, in some cases, that are more lucrative and more satisfying than going to college and getting in a lockstep situation. But I think if an individual wants to go to college, they should go, but I don't think they ought to go just because everybody else is.
Yeah.
I think that's a mistake. I don't think everybody needs a college education, and I think that's been proven.
I think, unfortunately, from what I've observed in the job market, if you want to work anywhere outside of McDonald's or a fast food restaurant or anything like that, education is the only way to kind of get there. And I say that because it seems like I've seen a shift where your bachelor's degree is almost equivalent to your high school diploma. And, you know, I'm actually pursuing a master's degree right now, and that almost feels equivalent to a bachelor's. It's like it's shifted down for some reason. And so in order to get at all a decent job that does pay okay, a bachelor's degree feels to be like a necessity now. But I still go back to it's super unaffordable, and so it's like this weird like catch-22, like you gotta pursue more education to get a decent job, but you can't afford that education, so what do you do?
Answering for someone who is gung-ho about going to college and knowing that, you know, this degree is going to set them apart from the rest and maybe get them a higher salary, I really can't be judgmental about it, because if they want that education, then they should definitely go for it.
And so it ends, even though it feels like we've only begun. Throughout the history of this fine school, there has been a lot of people who've experienced it firsthand, but even though we weren't able to hear their side of the story, we've still made it far. The quote-unquote controversial history and current state of Dixie State University can finally be put to rest, and we can move forward for the better. If you're feeling discouraged and might not want to go to college because of either the high debts that one might receive or for similar reasons, I strongly recommend that you reconsider. There are many opportunities to get around student loans, and there are a lot of ways that you can help solving the problems. Needless to say, do your research and come to your own conclusions. If you also feel like Dixie State might not be for you after watching this film, just take a look at how the current state of it is now. Things are only going to get better from here. But just remember, every school has a past, and Dixie State is no exception.